He is called the commander of the Klingons, Kenneth Mitchell. Junior Officer Connor of the Shenzhou. Yes, okay. We're getting into character here. This is great. Junior Officer Connor of the Shenzhou, Sam Vartholomeos. Chief Medical Officer Hugh Colber of the Starship Discovery, Wilson Cruz. All right, so, ladies and gentlemen, wow. So this is your first Star Trek convention, I'm assuming, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, welcome.
Hello, humans.
This is where you want to be. This to talk about Star Trek Discovery premiering on September 24th. The question, just to start, is like how familiar were you all with Star Trek before this even came to fruition? Like which one of you was a fan? Which one of you just sort of like knew what was going on? What was your introduction to Star Trek and what did it mean to you? Let's start with you, Mary.
Well, my first introduction was I went to see the 2009 movie, and I got really excited by the idea of the franchise, the chemistry between the cast, this forward-thinking sci-fi. I'd always been a sci-fi fantasy geek, and so it made me then get inspired to go back, and then I watched the original movies and fell in love with those, and really started falling in love with the original series and the intelligence and the science in the actual series. And then upon getting this part, the assignment I gave myself was to go through and watch all of the Klingon-based episodes throughout every iteration of the show. And so now I have a little flavor of each cast, each ensemble, and I've really fallen in love with the entire, franchise as a whole. So yeah.
How about you, Kenneth?
I was familiar with the series Next Generation, the original series TOS, but it wasn't until I got the job that I had to start revisiting everything. And I have a really close friend who's actually a close friend of Ted Sullivan's as well, and Sam Witwer. You may know who he is. And I would go over to his house. I've posted stuff online about it, but I would go over to his house and he would more or less educate me right from the first episode all the way to the end, and really focusing mostly on Klingon stuff. The first Errand of Mercy.
Yes.
Mr. Core. And I also remember as a kid, The Wrath of Khan. That was definitely one of my favorite movies, and still to this day remains to be so.
All right, Sam, how about you?
When I was young, my dad and I would watch movies all the time, and not very appropriate movies for like a 7-year-old. Like we'd watch The Godfather and Goodfellas and Meet Joe Black, which is one of my favorite movies. So my dad would try and get me to watch Star Trek. My brother, who's 8 years older than me, would try and get me to watch Star Wars. So I had the tug of war between them, and my dad ultimately won because in Voyage Home, with the whale. I loved the whales when I was a kid, and I saw this whale, and I was like, they got the whale, and the whale's small now, and then they're bringing the whale with them. And that's when I watched the old movies. I never got into the shows, so now that everything is online, I got into TOS and Next Generation, and now I'm part of it, which is super humbling.
Pinch me.
Yeah. Seriously, and seeing everyone here is I don't know, I got chills. It's amazing.
All right, Wilson, how about you? I get a feeling that you might be a little bit of a bigger Star Trek fan among this cast here.
Well, I think it's a competition. It's really. I think I take a backseat to Anthony Rapp any day on that subject. But I was, I'm probably the oldest one on this panel right now. But I was enamored with the original, but my real introduction was the Next Generation, and that's when I really became obsessed. And let's just be honest about it. And so for me, just having worked with Jonathan Frakes and as a director I had to get over that really quickly because I was like, oh my God, Riker's telling me what to do. And break, sorry.
Good catch.
Here we go. But anyway, so I will say really quickly that when I was cast, I wrote a little note to Aaron and Gretchen and to the head of CBS casting saying thank you because as a kid, you know, a young Latino kid in Brooklyn and in the Inland Empire in California, all I ever wanted to do was be on Broadway and be on Star Trek. And so for me, this is a dream come true, and pretty awesome that I get to share that experience with a man that I have known and loved for 20 years, Anthony Rapp. So it's incredibly, incredibly special that he's a part of both of those experiences for me.
Oh, that's amazing. Now, like, who did you call first? Like, who did you say, oh my God, guess what I got?
My mother. Who said, thank God, I don't have to talk about that anymore.
How about you, Sam?
The first person was actually I got this off of a self-tape, and I called the girl who read with me, one of my friends, Sadie, she's an actress, and I called her and just thanked her as she had work and she took off to help me with this self-tape. And then I told, one of the most memorable people I told was my grandpa. My 86-year-old Greek grandfather, who doesn't really speak English, but I told him, you know, in Greek, I said, you know, Grandpa, I got this show, and there we go. I got this part in this show, it's called Star Trek. I don't know if you know it. He goes, Star Trek? He goes, I know, this is the guy with the ears, right? So I was like, yeah, you know, the guy with the ears, that's right. So
The one with the whales and the
one with the whales and the one with the ears. This is how my family communicates. The one with, yeah, it's a T-shirt. So yeah. So yeah, that was one of the most memorable times. Yeah.
All right, so now, Kenneth, when you first found out that you got the role, how did you first hear? Was it your agent, your manager, you know, like sort of on the DL? How did you first hear that you got this and the role that you were going to play?
My casting process was a long, complicated story. However, I screen tested in front of Brian Fuller and on the cab ride home to tell my wife. I got a phone call from my agent saying that I got the part, and yeah, tears, the whole deal. I tell my kids I'm gonna be a Klingon.
You're cool.
I am not. Well, no, they say, what is that? And I said, you will find out. And now, to this day, all my son wants to do is play Klingon. He's like, okay, Dad, he hands me a tennis racket, and this is your Metcalfe, and I'm gonna play Cheetah Man, and you be Klingon, and we do play fighting all the time, so. It's nice to see that the next generation is going to enjoy Star Trek series once again.
I can guarantee there are already moments with Kenneth's portrayal of Cole that I have just been like, and people are going to be saying that line forever. It's very archetypal, incredible.
We can't
portrayal.
tell you what it is.
Can't tell you what it is.
You gotta watch.
But yeah, it's really thrilling to see that it's. Yeah.
Valmudme.
Yeah.
Amoria sabe mudme.
But my favorite.
Those are wise words.
Very wise. Very wise.
Who's your translator?
Our translator is actually, and this is an exciting moment, we haven't officially announced her yet, Robin Stewart, who is the #1 Klingon female grammarian in North America. She's a fan herself. She's been speaking the language for a very long time, and it's just been so thrilling to work with someone who is so passionate about the series itself and dresses as a Klingon, and to really get not only the correct pronunciation and the correct spelling of things, but also for her to be excited by the story we're telling. And I am always very thrilled when I get a note of confidence from her. And we also have a dialect coach Rhea Nolan, who is fabulous with us on set every day. And she learned the dialect from Robin. So it's this great, she's an expert of language, so she really is able to be this great bridge for us. And we have very different ways of learning and different ways of memorizing the language, and she's really malleable, and she really works with the way our brains work. And I think it's really great to have someone who just recently had to really learn all these sounds, because she can really clue us into like, oh, well, it's not really it's like, you know, and things like that. And we've found a lot of really fun ways to kind of play with the language.
Now, Kenneth, you said that your kids saw you. If your kids seen you dressed as a Klingon,
I've showed them a picture.
you showed them a picture.
I have showed them a picture.
Yeah, so you have a picture of you all dressed up.
I have a picture of me all dressed up as.
Is there something
as
you would
Cole.
like to show Las Vegas?
Do you guys want to see Cole?
I do!
Yeah.
Let's see Cole. Let's see Cole.
Let's see Cole.
I'm assuming what you're seeing is very cool. Oh, there you go.
There he is.
Yeah!
Right down there, Mary. Right down there.
Oh my God, that's great.
Now, how long, Kenneth, does it take you to get made up to look like that?
First of all, that is really cool. Wow.
Yeah. That's you.
It's so funny because I think we all have a very specific relationship. Like, I see Cole a lot, and I'm used to Cole, but I'm not as used to how Laurel looks. So we have these moments where you suddenly are realizing, oh, right, that's that whole essence.
That takes 3.5 hours to get into the makeup and another half hour to get into the wardrobe.
What do you do for those 3.5 hours while you're sitting there?
First, Doug Jones comes in. He gives me a hug.
Oh, darling.
Puppy. You know what? I'm always constantly going over the Klingon language. I retype out all my lines. I post them up on the mirror. I sit there and I'm just like constantly running my lines over and over and over again. As you know, it's an incredibly complex and challenging language. I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with Mark. But it's complicated for a reason, so it feels alien-like, and that's the essence of it when he was creating it. And but because it's incredibly difficult and I don't speak that language, it takes a lot of muscle memory to memorize each separate syllable over and over and over again. I mean, my kids and my family think I'm a little bit crazy walking around my house for 2 weeks, 8 hours a day, just running these lines. But at the end of the day, it is all worth it. Trust me, when you see the show, it's such an amazing texture to the show, and a real asset to helping out the audience learn more about the Klingon culture.
Yeah. I really feel, there's been so much discussion about adhering to canon, and that speaking the language was such a key part of sticking to the roots of this series, is giving the Klingons a three-dimensional quality that we do. It makes sense that if we're speaking to each other, we're going to speak in our native tongue, and really adding a fluidity and nuance. And I found in working on the lines, really breaking it down, knowing Robin does these great back translations, so you get the meaning of each word in this, because the syntax is essentially, Mark Okrand wanted it to be as alien as possible, as opposite of English as he could make it. So, so really learning, finding ways to get that meaning and breaking down. I found it very similar to when I have to break down Shakespeare, and there are all these words that I'm not familiar with. With Klingon, every word is not familiar, but I really find that we don't take it lightly how much time and energy we want to spend making sure that the words are pronounced correctly and they're felt and they're lived through. And then it's the moments in between. I mean, we spend a lot of time, we work with our dialect coach separately, and then we get together, you know, and we take time to figure out the emotional beats, you know, before we get on set, because we know that we want to be able to really dive in to what's happening between these two Klingons and not just be overwhelmed with the language and using the language to communicate.
Yeah, it's very much like an opera,
Yeah, yeah.
where even if you don't understand the language, you understand the emotions because of the eyes and the body language, and it tells the story regardless. But I'll never forget that moment where I was learning my lines on my own over and over and over again for weeks, and then when we finally got together
Yeah.
and looked each other in the eye and we read the scene for the first time back and forth in Klingon, in this foreign language to us. It was magical. It really was magical.
Really.
It was like this beautiful operatic dance.
Yeah, absolutely. And and there's something so beautiful about, I think, you know, I find that any language, you look at any language, any dialect, it very much tells you a lot about the culture. And you know, the Klingons are a very visceral, passionate,
Guttural.
culture, and I think that we get to connect to the characters on an even deeper level. Also with everything physically, and you know, later today you're going to have Neville and Glenn talking about this design and just how every inch of it is. Oh yeah.
Wait, let's talk about magic for a second. Sam and Wilson, I want to ask you about the sets of the Shenzhou, the sets of the Discovery. I mean, watching the footage that we've seen so far, watching the new trailer, this is cinematic television. The production values are enormous. So tell us about like how vast the sets are, and for those of you who got to do it, sitting in the chair. Go ahead. It's all you, Sam.
I really don't know how to describe it. It was, I was walking onto the set for the very first time. I think I was there a couple of days in advance for rehearsal, and there weren't that many people on the set. And I walk in, I forgot who I was walking with, but we were walking up the stairs, and I said, yeah, and I went, and we're right by the doors, and I almost didn't want to step in because I didn't know if I'd take off into space. Honestly, I mean, the work that this crew put into the design of the sets and the execution is amazing. And I got to sit, and you guys can see from the trailer, I'm right up front. Mr. Chekhov was, and it just kind of I mean, I'm looking at a green screen, but using my imagination, you can really kind of create the environment. And you know, the Shenzhou is the bridge is underneath the saucer, so that was interesting because you're kind of just staring at the top of the saucer, but it has all the writing, and you really feel like you're on the ship. And then when everything lights up, when all the screens light up, it's just
Yeah.
It's magical.
No, it's crazy.
and everything works. Everything works. You know, we're touching the screens and we're actually moving things around and we're making things. You know, it's.
So it works.
It works. It works. We can go. We can go to space.
Works.
Great.
The first thing I actually shot, my first day at school, as I like to call it, the first scene I did was on the bridge, and you know, the day before school, it's like, you know, you want to make sure all your pencils are sharpened and your backpack is all set. And I knew all my lines, and I looked up every word that I did not understand, which was all of them, and so I was like ready for my first day, because you know, you don't want to let anybody down, and completely gone. The minute I walked on set, you know, I'm talking to Doug in the scene, and I felt so terrible. I was like, I don't remember anything I'm supposed to say right now. I had to like take a moment and like collect myself, because it's like you're a kid thinking about imagining what it would be like if you got a chance to be on that set, in that room, and have that experience, and suddenly you're having it and it doesn't seem real, and you feel a sense of responsibility.
Quickly turns into a sense of responsibility.
Yeah, really quickly, like, you know, a responsibility to your own expectations, but also knowing that you have expectations, and that we want to serve the story and the mythology and the history of the show, and your expectations of it, and what we want to bring to it for you, and all of that happens in the moment that you walk onto that set. And so so I'm sorry, I had to apologize to the director and be like, yeah, I'm gonna need a moment for all of that.
I totally get that sense of responsibility. The first couple of weeks when we were there, none of the lights were on, none of the screens were working. I guess they didn't finalize it, but I remember I was staring at a blank screen, and we're having this really intense scene, and I'm supposed to be doing things. You know, Michelle's yelling at me, and when Michelle yells at you, you do something. You do what she's telling you to do.
Move a knob. Move some knob.
You got it. You got
a
it.
knob. Move a knob.
That lady she's a force to be reckoned with. So what I did was I used it's gross, but I used the oil of my fingertips to kind of sketch out little areas that I thought, this ejects something, this does something else, this something, but that's...
Assigned them all.
Yeah, I just assigned, and I was moving in my chair, and I was doing this and this part, and then finally when the lights started working, when the screens were on, I mapped everything out, and everything was kind of, it was on a loop, and I timed out. Being actors, you wait a lot, so I had enough time to map out and sort of time out the loops on the screens. So everything was in increments of 5 seconds. 5 seconds of this, then it changes in 5 seconds of this, but that's the sort of...
Yeah, it's the same thing in the med bay. Like the first time I went into the med bay, I was like, oh, what does this do?
Yeah.
Like there's all these little buttons and contraptions.
Yeah. And you ask people...
Like tricorder.
Yeah. You ask people, and they...
It lights up, I'm just saying. Had to hold it the right way. It's a whole thing. I tried to shoot, I can't remember what the heck it's called. It's the thing where you
Hyperspray.
Thank you, yes. And the hyperspray. And okay, all right, you know what?
Here we go. This is it.
We're gonna have a conversation about this right now. This is my first convention, and I'm gonna ask you to cut me a little slack. Okay, I'm very excited to be here. Woo! But along those lines, my dumbass tried to use that hypo spray in the wrong area. And she was, and the props people were like, no, dear. Over here. And I was like, oh, look at that. Because really, growing up, I thought I was gonna be a badass, fighting, captain or something, and I'm the doctor, which I'm very proud of and I'm excited about, but it's not what I pictured at the time. So, anyway. Yes, we assigned all the little buttons something to do. That was the gist of what I was going to say.
Yeah. Well, I got you.
Yelled
So
at this area.
As you now know, fans, they kind of know their stuff.
No, I know. I have deep respect.
Deep respect.
Deep respect.
Deep respect.
Now, I've been saying this all day about Star Trek, going back to '66 in the original series. It was obviously ahead of its time in terms of the kinds of stories that they were doing, the allegories. They were topical. It was the diversity, the equality. They were Star Trek was making those things happen before they were hashtags on Twitter, and you know what I mean. But it was the show that had the first interracial kiss in Plato's Stepchildren. So now, Wilson, tell me about how Hugh and Paul, that their relationship goes to another level for Star Trek.
First, I want to say how incredibly proud I am to be part of this story. I know that so many of us have been waiting for this for so long. And and for anybody who doesn't understand why it's such a big deal, it's a big deal because there's a kid out there who is going to turn on his TV sometime in September and October, and he's going to be a young little brown or black or Asian boy or girl who is questioning his or her sexuality or their orientation, and they're going to see two men love each other and be there for each other and support each other and be in awe of each other's genius. And it's not going to be an issue. It's not something we're going to explain to you. It's just going to be what it is. That kid is going to grow up knowing that he can be exactly who he or she is and be whatever he or she wants to be. Whether that be a doctor or a scientist, that they are a part of the human story and they can affect change and they can be part of a multicultural utopian ideal that Star Trek has always, always represented. And that's the story we're going to tell.
To further the question, Star Trek, you brought up Errand of Mercy. Okay, that episode aired in March of 1967. That episode was an allegory for the Cold War. The Klingons were the Russians. So Star Trek, a lot of those episodes, many of them were allegories that hold up because we're still dealing with many of the same things. So in what ways do you see, because Discovery is going to be different because of the way it's going to be serialized, because it's going to be about this war, in what ways do you see Discovery sort of being an allegory and very topical and philosophical for current events today?
Well, I will say that, yes, just in that vein, it's always been a story about exploring new worlds, but the other, and exploring what it is to be alien, but also to feel alien. And I think that certainly the compassion that we are giving to the Klingons, who, yes, in a certain way, you could say in this story, you could say we were the bad guys, but the way that the writers have so beautifully crafted this story is you really get a window in to who we are, our humanity or our Klingonanity. And I think that is so in the vein exactly of what has always been true. It's not black and white. The world is not, it's just not that simple. And people on both sides do things that they regret, and they do things that they're proud of. And both sides have a deep, deep capacity to love and a deep capacity to feel. And I just think that I'm so proud of that element of this series. Is I see that, I read that in the scripts on Federation and Klingon sides. I witness it when I'm acting with my fellow Klingons. Like I feel a deep, deep passion for those tenets that have always been true for the show.
Yeah. I just want to say how incredibly proud I am, again, that's the word, pride, to be telling this story and to continue the Star Trek story at a time, and I know we hear this a lot these days, and I'm not going to get overly political, but at a time, more than ever, do we need to remember that we need each other, and that no matter how strong the forces are that will try to tell us how different we are from each other and how much we have to fear each other, that we're telling a story about how much we need each other, and that the only way we're going to get through any of this, and the only way we're going to become better as a species and a universe, is if we actually latch on to each other and not separate each other from each other. And that's what we've always heard from Star Trek. Mm-hmm. And I think, not to repeat myself, but now more than ever, we need to remember that.
Yeah.
At a time when there are racist policies introduced about immigration, that a person cannot be illegal. I'm sorry. We are in the end, wherever you come from on this planet, we are all human beings, and we have more in common than we don't. And this show, this mythology, is a continuous reminder of that.
How are we going to see on Discovery how the Klingons and the Federation are more alike than unalike? You know, the other shows, you know, at least the first show, you know, the Klingons were the baddies. But from what I've been hearing and reading and seeing, like, they're more alike than not alike. And I think someone said in an interview recently, there's no baddie, there's no villain.
Yep.
They relate to each other. Let's talk about the dynamic between the Federation and the Klingons in this universe.
Well, one thing I actually just kind of recently observed with Laurel is I was realizing my relationship with the Klingon Empire and my relationship with the Federation. Who I am to Cole is very different from how I'm perceived by those on the Discovery, by the Federation. And that's just what popped into my mind, is that I think that you get a real dynamic within each culture. You see the dynamics on the Discovery as well, who's at the top, who's at the bottom, who's moving around. I think that, once again, it's just the scenes that are being written on both sides explore intimacy, and they explore why, not just the how.
I mean, I find myself reading the script and we get to the Klingon storylines and I'm like, oh God, that's, like, I find myself
Sympathizing?
sympathizing and just feeling for their cause. And I'm like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
But, you know, I mean, I think that's a testament to the writing and to your performances and what you bring to it. I think that's the story we're trying to tell.
There's
Like,
no, go.
Cool. I mean,
very
my
Klingon of
character
me.
in itself he's very complicated. He's very leans more towards some of the traditional Klingons that we're familiar with. He's very powerful and very complicated. But he does have a line that I could paraphrase for you that kind of helps explain some of these themes that we're talking about. And he has this line, he says, "All I see is another attempt by humanity to rob us of our identity."
Yes.
And I think that kind of encompasses what we're talking about here as far as the Klingons. You're seeing the other perspective of how they see things, and you perhaps might sympathize with them.
Well, I've really found that, there's a certain sort of parallel as well. You know, we've witnessed this time and time again with colonization, as you see an indigenous culture that has been preserved in their own right, and then, you know, Federation comes in and wants to help. And I think that it's a very interesting sort of, expansion of that. You really get to see how we play with that. One other Klingon phrase that I think is also part of this is one of Bechach mech Yamosh, which is to conquer compromise. And that's kind of a tenet of Laurel's, and I think that that's also a new element. Another nuance within the Klingon culture is there's a very interesting difference of opinion in exactly how to go about affecting change, and you kind of see that on both sides as well.
You know, you brought up the JJ movies. You know, for a lot of people, by the way, I love the JJ movies. You did too, right? I mean, you know, for a lot of people, that was their Star Trek. Those movies, what was great about them was they were Star Trek movies for people who maybe never seen it. You know, they didn't really love it. For some of my friends, their kids, you know, Kirk and Spock are Chris Pine and Zachary Quinto before they are William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy, which makes me feel really old. But the point is that they appealed to the masses. It wasn't just for the fans. And I think that's crucial, is that Discovery, I want to see that happen. I think we all want to see Discovery make Star Trek fans out of people who were not fans before? Sam?
I think it will. With the exception of young Burnham, I think I'm the youngest person on set.
Oh, nice for you.
And, no, that's not what I meant.
Just kidding. I'm kidding.
And I think it is crucial for this series to continue the next, or inspire the next generation of fans. You better believe that pun was intended. Because we want there to be a Star Trek Las Vegas 2030.
So do we. So do we.
Might not make
And
it.
it's really great. I'm seeing young kids. I'm seeing older fans, and I think that's fantastic. And as long as
Wait a second.
there are elements of the old of TOS of Next Generation, as well as allowing the creators, the directors, the actors, giving them room to explore different ways to go about different situations and just executing Star Trek.
Here's the other thing.
Yeah.
Here's the other thing, is that, your cast member, your fellow cast members, Sonequa Martin Green,
Yeah.
I mean, Jason Isaacs,
Yeah.
Doug Jones, Anthony Rapp.
Mary Weissman.
Yeah, let's talk about working with the gang. I mean, it's how excited are they? And, especially...
Well, first of all, they're heartbroken that they can't be here. I can...
Yes.
Yeah, but they're working. They're making more Star Trek.
Yeah.
They're amazing. They're already a tight. We are a tight knit unit.
Yes.
And there's so much love on that set. It's crazy, and everyone is completely in awe of the other person. Jumping at the chance at being in scenes with people you haven't had a chance to be in scenes with, and and if I could just take a moment to attest to the great leadership that Miss Sonequa has really modeled for us as a cast and a crew. She is, first of all, her work ethic is unbelievable, and she sets a high bar for all of us, and I am in awe of her, and we just love her.
Yeah.
And Mary Weissman is the most hilarious person you'll ever meet in your life, and you're going to fall in love. That's all I'm going to tell you.
I will, yeah, to piggyback off of that. Well, funny story, Mary Wiseman and I were in the exact same class at Juilliard together for college. And so it's been this incredible experience of, first of all, we're both named Mary. and so we always had this connection, but there was one time we had a reading, and she was sitting right across from me, and it was earlier on, and I suddenly had this moment of remembering all 4 years of being in this ensemble with her, and then I looked around and kind of saw everyone else at the table and realized, oh, that we're building this new ensemble. And I can just attest to the fact, too, what Sonequa has brought. I mean, she is, I call her our fearless leader. She is compassionate, and she looks at each and every one of us. The other day I had a big thing I was doing, and she came in the prosthetic trailer and gave me a little moment. I'm like, you don't need to, you've got plenty to do, girl. You've got a whole other scene, but she checked in, made sure I was doing well. She knows what it is to be in an ensemble, and I think that we are so blessed and lucky to have her, and I can't wait for you guys to see the force that she is in this role. And then overall, like you were saying, the entire cast is everyone's so loving. There's no one has a giant ego. It's crazy. It's really, really just lovely, and we're in it for the work and the art, which is fun. It's not just oh, everyone look at me. It's I want to actually be there and connecting with my scene partner, and it doesn't matter if I look gross or weird, or it's about telling this story. So yeah.
And we'll be remiss by leaving out Mr. Shazad, who is sexy and wonderful and incredibly talented. I'm just saying.
Let's open it up. And,
On that note,
okay, let's go to this side first. Stage, I guess that's stage right. That's the left side. You. Hang on.
This question is for Cole, and I'm sorry, Miss, I forgot your name, but did you, in preparing for your role to play Cleon, in my opinion, Michael Dorn is the best Cleon in Star Trek history. So in your preparing to play Cleon, did you collaborate with him at all in preparing for your role?
Great question. Did you collaborate with Michael Dorn?
I wish. No, we didn't collaborate. I really look forward to meeting him for the first time. I still haven't met him yet, but I certainly was inspired by the foundation that he laid out in his. Is he not the longest standing actor of? Yeah, that's right. My preparation started with reading Final Reflection, John Ford. I thought that was a great launching pad for the Klingons. And from there, again, my friend Sam Witwer, he kind of took me through each episode of Klingons in the past. And then I got lots of advice from our fearless leaders, producers, and writers, specifically Ted Sullivan, who was just up here recently.
How about you, Mary?
I have yet to interact with Michael or any of the other wonderful Klingons, but I've been very inspired by. I feel like I know them. Yeah. That's what's so funny is like I have a very, very strong relationship with each and every one of them from watching them. So I do hope that the time will come when one or all of we all get to cross paths.
A Klingon party.
Yeah.
Eat real cake, blood pie.
Yeah, blood wine.
Some gum.
See them at a party, you'll go like, I'm with you, buddy.
Yeah.
Right over here.
Hello. Thank you all for coming to Vegas. I mean, after hearing what you've all got to say, all of us can't wait for September 24th. I mean, totally. Anyway, my question is for everyone. I mean, earlier Scott brought up the original series. The original series focused on the three leads, Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. By contrast, Deep Space Nine was a Star Trek show that featured the entire ensemble, at different points. From, it's kind of early, but from the sense that you've gotten, and the scripts you've read and your conversations with the producers and writers, do you think that, Discovery will be, kind of like focusing on the 2 or 3 lead characters, or will it be more of an ensemble show from, the sense that you've gotten so far?
I mean, it's definitely been an ensemble.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the producers envision. I think that's.
I think from the beginning, the idea was that this would be the first Trek that was not told from the captain's perspective. So you have our protagonist as a lieutenant commander, and so you get to really see it through a slightly different eye. Still a very intelligent, educated, well-ranking officer, but you get to see it from a slightly different perspective, which I think is really exciting and allows for a lot more exploration of, not just everyone on the bridge.
Just to go on that, a lot's being said about how Discovery is the first Star Trek show, even though DS9 was somewhat serialized, that this really is the first serialized Star Trek show. So I'm just so fascinated and excited to see sort of the arc that we're going to see among the Federation and the arc that we're going to see among the Klingons, because you're going to have more time to develop them because you're seeing their world versus just a Klingon being on the Enterprise or on Deep Space Nine. So like how exciting is that to really add so much to those worlds?
Well, I think it's, I think it was said before we got out that the catalyst for the stories is these interpersonal relationships, and you need an ensemble in order to do that. In order to develop those relationships, right? So, I mean, that's the driving force of the storytelling. It has to be. And I also said in the panel before this, it's no accident that it's called Discovery. You know, they're discovering each other. They're discovering themselves. Yeah.
Love that.
Next question.
So first off, on behalf of everyone in this room, I'd like to say welcome to the family. On your first convention. I mean, I don't think you're ever going to find a group of fans that is more dedicated to their franchise. You don't see like Friends conventions like this or anything.
Good point.
My biggest question is, so in case you can't tell, pretty dedicated to Klingons.
Oh yeah!
So when I first saw the Discovery trailer, I'll be honest, and a lot of people I think share my feelings, we were really nervous. Because the Klingons in Discovery, though beautiful, don't look anything like the old Klingons. Their world is completely different. You've said a lot of things that have reassured me, but I think a lot of Klingon fans are afraid of losing the Klingons that we've fallen in love with before. So obviously one of my brothers is on the other side of the room right now.
Yeah.
What would you say to the fans like me to reassure us that we're not losing the Klingons that we know and love?
Well, the images that you've seen so far are from one house, led by Tukovma. Today you just saw the first image of me, and I don't know if you want to put it up again, but yeah.
Put it up again. Put it up.
Like that? That'd be nice.
Cool. So even in the costumes there, or in the wardrobe there, you're seeing it's starting to venture towards more of the traditional Klingons, more leather and a different set of armor. And the series itself is going to explore the different 24 houses and the leaders among them. And you will find different complexities, different ideologies amongst those houses. And so, again, what you've seen already in these images are mostly just from one house. And you're going to start to explore further Klingons. And each of those houses have a different set of physical looks and variations, as well as ideologies.
Yeah, I think I'm really, really excited for you to see Neville Page and Glenn Hendrick talk about the design, because I can't express enough how meticulous their design is and how every element, you know, obviously the hair was the biggest thing that people noticed, or the lack thereof, and I will attest to the fact that there's a reason that my ridge goes back the way it does, and there are sensors and pheromones, and there's a whole, I don't want to say too much because I know they're going to articulate it even better than I am, but there's a whole reasoning behind that is adhering to what has always been true in Klingon canon. And yes, the exploration of the houses I think is really fun. Larella's of two houses, which is a fun sort of thing. She's House Takuvma and House Mokai, and you get a great kind of interesting exploration of what it is to be of two different ideologies.
And I'm from the House of Kor.
Might have heard of that. So I really deeply believe that we're in line with what has come before, but also adding a new kind of nuance and I think that
layers of knowledge and explanation.
Yes.
Further explanation of the species, of the culture.
Absolutely. And yeah, again, the language we're dedicated to it.
In other words, I think you're going to be fine.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I ask a really
Yeah. Hang on.
Can I ask a really geeky question? Can I just geek out for a second? I mean, all right, so the show takes place 10 years before the original series. So technically, that puts us around the timeline of the Cage. So is there a chance that maybe the Discovery and its voyages will come across the Enterprise, commanded by Captain Christopher Pike, with a young Vulcan science officer named Spock?
Can I just say, I kind of hoped that Ensign Connor was an ancestor of Mr. Chekhov. I thought that I'd walk in and they'd be like, "Can you do a Russian accent?" And I'd be like, "Absolutely." I just love it. I thought, I'm sitting at the helm over there, and I'm Connor Chekhov. Yeah. No, it doesn't work. I am not a brother, cousin, uncle, father. No, but that would be really cool. That'd be
We
really
can't
cool to
answer
watch.
that question.
Yeah.
I know you can't answer it, but damn, that's
I
such
mean,
a
even
good
if
question.
we
It's
even
a
if we
great
knew, we
question,
couldn't
right?
answer it, but we don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're mere actors.
Back over here.
Hi, thank you again for being here. My question is also for our Klingons. You've talked a lot about the language and you've spoken a few times in it, so my curiosity is, do you just memorize from week to week, or are you developing a fluency in it over time? And if not, do you have any desire to develop fluency in it?
I have a very deep desire to be fluent. I'm a geek and I love language, and I guess I came in kind of being a big Shakespeare lover, and that has been a huge key in for me in how I break down the language. Like I was saying earlier, kind of memorizing the meaning of each word and the syntax and kind of getting familiar with that. But because it is so opposite of English, I know it's going to be a long haul. But I mean, yeah, that's definitely the dream, because I respect so much that there are people that do speak it, and I think it's incredible that this is a language that came from the fans and was developed by the fans. I mean, it's beautiful. There's something really unique about being able to speak something that came from so much love and passion for a species. So, fingers crossed.
That's the end game for me. I would love to become fluent in the language, but there just wasn't enough time from the time we got cast, the time we had to start shooting our principal photography to memorize, to learn the language like that. So the first part became a memorization quest, but I have gotten to the point where now when I get the scripts sent to me and they're broken down in Klingon, I can now read and know how to enunciate the words properly, and that I feel like was really great step.
It is. To know the difference between the capital H or the GH and kind of where that lands in your mouth, and it's neat. The Klingon dictionary is great.
Michael Cran, right over here. Yes.
Good afternoon, and I would like to thank you on behalf of all of the parents in the audience, because you're giving our children their Star Trek. Not because we don't want to share our Star Trek, but because we think they need to have their own Star Trek to deal with their own issues, which weren't ours. And going on from that, thank you. My question is to all of you. How do you cope with the long shadows of the actors who have crossed the bridge and sailed into space before you? How do you cope with William Shatner's James Kirk or Christopher Pine's James Kirk? How do you cope with Sir Patrick Stewart's Captain Picard, or with...
Get it.
How do you cope with that? Because there are tons of expectations on you. Even our children have expectations from you.
Well, okay. I'd like to say I really respect the first part of what you said. Well, I understand that we hold your childhood, that we hold a lot of what makes you you in our hands, and I think our producers, our actors, our writers, our whole creative team, we understand that, and we're trying to be as respectful. Thank you, the one person. We're trying to be the. Oh, thanks, guys. We're trying to respect TOS and Next Generation, but allow us the creative freedom to give you and your children their Star Trek. And I promise you, they will see bits and pieces of yours. And you can sit on the couch like I did with my dad, and you'll point out the subtle, little hints at TOS and Next Generation. And I think that will really make it special for all of you, you and your children.
Great question. Thank you. Right back over here. Yes.
My question is also about the Klingon language. I was wondering if when you auditioned for these roles, assuming that it was a normal kind of audition, did you have any idea that there would be so much Klingon language? And did they kind of test you in any way for getting all those different guttural sounds like you mentioned, ha and all of that stuff?
No.
Okay.
And did you have to do like a start? Did you have to do like risk is our business?
You would think that would be a good idea. They kind of lucked out. They lucked out a little bit with the people that they hired. Were dedicated actors that were willing to go that extra mile to do this, because it's not easy. I mean, Mary and I will be curled up in the corner on hour 14 in our prosthetics, running our lines in our head, and you know, just saying to ourselves, we just got to get through this. We got to get through this. Like this is important. We got to keep going. Yeah. It's a challenge. It's not easy, and we do it because of you guys. We just really want to be respectful to you and the show.
Do you speak other languages, either of you?
I don't speak another language, and so I've found that the other Klingons that do speak other languages, they have a little bit easier time on picking up the language, and I don't speak any other languages, so it really became a challenge of memorization for me. And I felt like I had to work incredibly hard, but it's worth it. I mean, with those challenges, it becomes a great reward, and every night I'm cutting out of my prosthetics on an 18-hour day, I feel very rewarded about what I just accomplished. Not only for myself, but for you guys.
Yeah, it's really true. I mean, I feel it's so fun to be so exhausted at the end of the day. I feel so fulfilled that we went there and had a good time. And I really will, just sing praises of Ken in the way that I think we have a great kind of partnership. It's like one person might be freaking out in one moment, being like, I can't get it, and then they're like, no, it's gonna be fine, and then the next, it's a real, camaraderie that you build, because you have to be there for each other. Yeah.
The prosthetics are hot. They're hot.
They're hot. They're sexy, but they're also hot.
The contact lenses, they hurt.
The thing with the contacts for me, though, is that I actually wear them in real life, so I'm like the only one that's like, oh, thank God, I can see again, because they're actually my prescription. So they're like, do you really want me to put them in now? I'm like, please, I want to see.
Another thing, it's kind of a bit of a short, funny story, is that when I was auditioning for Brian Fuller, when I was screen testing for him, they were very secretive with the scripts and the sides.
Yeah.
Everything was renamed, and when I was auditioning, I didn't even know I was a Klingon. It was written as a totally different species, and I just assumed like, oh, they're just going to explore a different kind of species and culture in the story. And so, but Brian Fuller didn't know that they changed all of the lines, but the casting did. So when I presented my audition for him for the first time, he's looked at me like, what is that? Remain Argot? What? You know you're a Klingon, right? And then in my head I'm like, holy fucking shit. Holy shit. I'm a fucking Klingon.
Thank you.
One more question and it's yours. Make it a good one, no pressure.
All right, I'll do my best. Thanks for being here, guys. We really appreciate it. Talk about the challenges of being actors and preparing to do your scenes really well in a show that's heavily serialized, yet I'm sure the production realities dictate that it's filmed all out of sequence.
Well, I mean, that's how most of us work most of the time anyway, right? Unless we're doing a play. We shoot out of order all the time, but, I can't speak for everyone else, I'll let them speak for themselves, but there was a rough outline of who Dr. Culber is. And Aaron and Gretchen were really generous with me in allowing me to find who he was with Anthony and what that relationship was going to be. I kind of knew where we were going and who he was, but we really found it in the moment, and we really found it with each other. And that's really beautiful, because we created a relationship that only existed because we created it. Mm-hmm. And I fell in love. I was able to fall in love with the Paul Stamets that Dr. Culber sees, right? That he sees through all of his idiosyncrasies, if you will, his prickliness, and loves him for it. And so that was really the basis of how I created him. So.
Yeah, I mean, just speaking to that, I think that the whole creative team, you know, Aaron and Gretchen and all of the EPs, they're very character driven. And I've really found too that when they see something happening in the dailies, they go with it. They really, really respect what we're finding. And that's been so thrilling. I mean, to really see the development of each character and the narratives and how they are augmented and are inspired by what we're doing, and then of course then they'll write something and then it inspires me to take it a step further. And I think that that's something really exciting about, yes, particularly with it being serialized, is you get to see this larger arc. And also, speaking about Anthony, one thing he said to me early on was like, he's like, I don't want to know, I call it the Snape rule, because J.K. Rowling told Alan Rickman, you know, that he was in love with Harry's mom, and he wasn't allowed to tell anyone that. So I'm like, if it passes the Snape rule, like only tell me the stuff that I need to know, but don't tell me the end game, because I just want to play the moment and that suspense. Of course, I'm a control freak and OCD and I want to know everything, but it's really, really great. And that was something Anthony had said to me early on. He's like, I only want to know what I have to know. And that's really thrilling. It's terrifying, but it's thrilling.
The other thing I really loved about, I'm sorry, I jumped up, but I forgot to say is, what I've loved about this relationship and this character is creating the delineation between who he is when he's an officer and who he is when he's with his partner, who also happens to be an officer. And that work dynamic, do you know what I mean? Like if you're working with somebody you love, like the responsibility that you still carry for your job, but also to the person that you love, who you happen to work with. That was a really interesting dynamic to figure out as well.
On that note, thank you for that question. Now, ladies and gentlemen, are you excited for Star Trek Discovery? Wilson, Sam, Kenneth, Mary, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you all.
Before you,
We love you.
wait, photo op.
First, let's get you guys cheering. Come on.
Text me that photo.
See you on Instagram.
Text me that photo. Thank you.